Hello today.
Hello. So guess what I want to talk about?
Our favorite thing.
Yeah, we'll go with that. So I want to tell you about a couple of people that have been really involved in Care Beyond the Boulevard and have gotten off the streets as a result of the work that we do.
For me, that is my favorite thing. You were confused by that. It's shocking to me. She likes suffering. I like success. So today we're going to tell two stories. Story of two folks who have gone through a lot. And really what it takes to get out of homelessness.
Absolutely. So welcome to season 1, episode 8.
We've done 8 episodes.
8.
So
Yeah, 8 episodes. That's a lot of putting up with us. Of Untangling Knots. Today it's stories from the streets.
Stories from streets. Here we go. This is my favorite. So, okay. You started Care Beyond the Boulevard.
Disclaimer.
Oh, I got to give a disclaimer. Thank you.
I got you.
It's a big deal.
And the brains of the operation.
That's true. I am a person who provides reason. I'm the most reasonable man in homelessness, obviously. This is a disclaimer, though. The views and opinions expressed on the show do not necessarily reflect those of the place I work, my supporters, my friends, my family, or anyone except me. So if you have a problem with anything I say, come to me.
And the same holds true for me. My views and opinions do not reflect those of my organization, of my employees, of my family. Although I'm not sure my family could be around me if they didn't agree with me. So maybe it does reflect my family just a little bit.
Some overlap.
Yeah, there's a little bit of overlap there. I mean, you have to be with like-minded people.
True.
But they don't necessarily have to agree with every single thing you say.
If they want a pleasant life.
It helps.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
All right, here we go.
Here we go.
Okay, so why did you pick Johnny and Kurt?
So Johnny and Kurt are two stories that, honestly, his story has been with us since the beginning.
Wow.
We met Johnny 9 years ago in October, and the story of resilience and recovery and what it takes to get out of homelessness really resounds with Johnny. And then Kurt is also a person who struggled with homelessness off and on for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I think that I'm very connected to both of these people still. And I think that hearing their stories and the barriers that they overcame and just their lifelong struggles really shows that with ongoing support that people can get out of homelessness, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get out of homelessness, and it takes a lot to stay out of homelessness once you've been in that cycle.
I think it's important to know that.
Wait, one more thing.
Yeah.
I do want to make sure that people know that I have their full permission to talk about them, to tell their story, to tell their struggles. They both are very open to that and want to share their stories. They both listen to the podcast as well.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to tell you a story about Kurt, a text he sent to me after one of our podcasts. So, okay, go on up. Yeah,
okay. I think there's kind of a misconception, especially in mainstream media around homelessness, that getting out of homelessness is an economic issue. It's just about housing. It's simplistic. And that is not true of folks who are chronically homeless. It is not simply about being broke. It's about being broke and being alone and trying to deal with complex healthcare conditions that absolutely deserve to and need to be treated.
Absolutely.
And getting out of homelessness means untangling those knots. And that's what you do. And I think it's important, too, for folks to understand the human cost of getting someone out of homelessness and why you have to put so much effort into it. There's this myth in social services. And I heard it a lot in my career when I was young. You can't work harder than your client. Well, then you're never going to help your client.
No.
That makes absolutely no sense. Now, there's going to be a trade-off down the line.
You can't want it more than your client.
That's fine.
Right? But you
better work harder.
You have to work harder because they're treading water.
Yes.
But you can't. I do agree with that. I do want people to understand that doesn't mean you have to want it.
Oh, that's nothing to do with it.
No,
You got,
absolutely.
I mean, at the beginning, it might be 99-1. You're doing the work. But over time, it turns to 90-10, 80-20. It starts to shift. And that's what you're moving for. You're looking for those incremental changes.
Absolutely.
So Johnny has been with you from the beginning.
Yep.
How'd you meet him?
So Johnny's story is pretty crazy how we met him. This was back in the days. So when we first started doing Care Beyond the Boulevard, we had like a truck. My husband's truck was what we used to go and do street rounds. And we had a stop on a street, and it was a fairly new stop to us. And somebody was standing down there waiting for some food to come by because there were food trucks out. And they saw us come by and they're like, hey, can you go check on my friend? He's up in his tent. He's having back pain and I'm really worried about him. And so we did. Myself and one of our other providers and a couple of our volunteers went up. I always say we hiked 10 miles uphill one way because it seemed like that. But we went and we did a physical exam on Johnny and we were talking to him, and this was the first time we met him. Very thin, emaciated looking. And he said he'd been having back pain for over a month, and he had gone to a couple of emergency rooms. They had told him he had a urinary tract infection, had given him some antibiotics for that, and dismissed him. When we did our exam on him, we felt like there were some neurological changes in his lower extremities that were concerning, that maybe there was really something going on neurologically. And he, at that time, refused to go to the emergency room. He said, I've already been to 2 ERs and there's nothing wrong with me. And so we gave Johnny some anti-inflammatories. That's about all we could do at that point on the streets. And we said, we're going to come back and see you next week. If you're not better, would you consider going to the ER? And he said, I'll think about it. And so one of the things that we learned later from Johnny, and I'm going to just put this in here, is that he didn't think we were going to come back.
Certainly.
Because it's very common.
Because they don't.
Right. Because people don't. And so we went back the next week, and Johnny was worse. He was incontinent, meaning he was peeing and pooping on himself. And when you have that and you have lower back pain, it's very concerning for neurological changes. And so we said, we really need you to go to the emergency room. He did agree. It was myself and the provider that had been with me the week before and one other provider. And so we literally carried him out of the woods, found a shortcut so we didn't have to walk uphill, but carried him out of the woods.
Was there any way he could have walked out of the woods?
There's no way he could have walked out of the woods. It was too far. I think there's a couple of things about Johnny that we learned later. Johnny had a substance use disorder for over 13 years, had been homeless. And during that time when he first started having back pain, his friends would bring him his drugs. But friends are friends, but when you're having to get your friend food and drugs, sometimes that friendship ends a little bit.
Substance use disorder usually wins.
Yeah, it did. And he still loves those people.
Of course.
Right.
We know we
right.
get it.
But so in addition to this excruciating back pain, he also withdrew on the streets. So by the time we found him, he hadn't had any drugs for about 30 days.
Okay. So he was going through the back pain
and withdrawals.
Yeah. That is torture.
Yeah. Tortures. Okay. So
wow.
We get him into the emergency room. Our doc was with him. One of our docs was with him, and he asked them to do an MRI. And MRIs aren't commonly done in the ER. And I still to this day do not know what he said, but they did agree to do an MRI. That was after they started the dismissal paperwork. And he was like, He had osteomyelitis in 2 levels of his lumbar spine. So what that means is that the bones in his back were affected. Okay. So osteomyelitis, you heard me talk about my husband having the end of his toe cut off.
Yes.
He got the end of his toe cut off because he had osteomyelitis in his toe.
The truth is he owed someone money in the toes.
He's telling me different stories, but osteomyelitis can lead to severe infections throughout the body, sepsis, and death. So this was in his lumbar spine. That's all. So this was in his lumbar spine.
For how long?
Well, we don't know. At least 6 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
So they admitted him and started on strong IV antibiotics. What we learned about Johnny through the course of this time that he was in the hospital for 4 to 6 weeks. And we learned that Johnny has a bachelor's degree in biology. He is well-educated, well-spoken, speaks Japanese and English. So Johnny's backstory is...
That makes no sense. He speaks Japanese and English?
Because he was a war baby and his mom was Japanese.
Wow, that is rare.
Right. So...
What a unique dude. That's cool.
So, but there's more because Johnny was also a member of LGBTQAI community, and his family did not accept that. So that caused
That's brutal.
A fracture. So here we have like, you have a family who, and Johnny is in 50s. And so and I'm in my 50s. We're in that age group where when we were teenagers, people who were not heterosexuals were not accepted mainstream. And so we had, the now coming out, which is ridiculous to me because I didn't have to come out as a straight person, and that's a whole other subject. But anyway, so Johnny had to hide who he was for many years, and then when he didn't hide it anymore, his family did not accept it. So there's a lot of stress and anxiety related to that underlying. Johnny, when he first got out of school, he worked in genetics, and he didn't like it. It wasn't his thing. He was an artist, very, very talented artist. And so sitting, in front of a computer, looking at whatever it was he was looking at, Petri dishes or whatever, was not his thing. He got into restaurant management, which apparently high-end restaurant management at that time, there's a lot of cocaine involved. A lot of cocaine. Yeah, because a lot of really tough hours. I mean, he managed
you work until 4 a.m.
Yeah, he managed a high-end restaurant. And he was in a relationship that ended badly. And it was a long-term relationship that he thought was
good
forever.
Yeah.
Right. So that started the spiral of events for him as far as his homelessness. And when we met him 9 years ago, he had been homeless for 13 years. And he had, after, the addiction to cocaine as a restaurant owner, and then after the breakup, he just spiraled and then progressed or regressed to meth. I'm not sure that's a progression.
Let's remember this progression for anyone who's saying, oh, it's the substance use disorder. It was his family rejecting him as the starting point. And keep in mind, we're talking about someone his family knew.
Yeah.
They knew him. And they still rejected him because of
biology. It's not a choice.
So imagine how much that breaks you as a human being. The people who are supposed to know and love you say no to you.
Yep. So, we learned this about Johnny during the course of his hospitalization because someone would go up and see him every day. We developed this relationship with him. So the question then is, so with osteomyelitis and with the degree of infection he had, he was not able to walk normally. He took a lot of therapy, but remember, so we're talking 9 years ago. This was in 2017. Oh, well, we met him in 2016, the spring of 2016, fall of 2016. I'm sorry, fall of 2016. So Medicaid expansion hadn't occurred in Missouri, and he had been homeless in Missouri. So he doesn't have insurance.
Really?
Yeah, I know. He couldn't get a job because when we found him, had a severe substance use disorder, some mental health disorder. There was a lot of complexities to that. So Johnny is getting ready to get dismissed from the hospital. And so we start having these conversations. He knows he doesn't want to go back to the streets. He doesn't have an income. And he, at this point, can't get a job because his back pain is still excruciating at times. And he needs to continue on IV antibiotics. And so we were
Those are some barriers.
A few barriers. And so we were able to work with Johnny and Catholic Charities in Kansas City to get him into a men's transitional house over in Kansas City, Kansas.
Shalom House.
Shalom House. Yes, it was great. And so, but while Johnny was there, he continued to have problems. Like he wore a full back brace and he needed therapy, which he had a hard time getting because he didn't have insurance. We were able to finally get that and help get him there because he didn't have a car. He couldn't walk to the bus stop because of his back pain, which was limiting. So he had a lot of support. And then from some transitional housings, and we don't know that this is going to happen in the future, but as it stood then, they were able to give him support in housing after he, was through their program. And it's not a recovery program at Shalom. They do have mandatory participation in like NA and AA and those things. But you have to, it's not a low barrier transitional housing, you have to be sober to be there. And so there are requirements for them.
What that means is it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And they can do random drug screening and things like that. So
And that can be tough. Marijuana means you're out of there.
exactly.
So
particularly in Kansas.
absolutely,
It's not legal.
It's not legal there, yeah.
So, but Johnny was able to work through that, and he was there. And I can't remember how long. I think he was there for like 12 or 14 months. He was there for an extended period of time. It was. But while he was there, he started going back to school. He knew he didn't want to do what he was doing in the past, as far as like genetics and biology. But he also knew he couldn't do the other thing he knew how to do, which was working and managing restaurants because of his limiting back pain. So he said, I want to become a drug and alcohol counselor. And so he went back to school and became a drug and alcohol counselor.
I got a biologist who's now a drug and alcohol counselor.
Yep.
That's incredible.
And he's doing so well at it. And he works for an agency over in Kansas City, Kansas, that helps with re-entry from prison systems.
Wow.
So he's been off of the streets now for 9 years. He's doing well. He still has the thing of what Johnny tells me is that it's still one day at a time for him. There's still urges. He's fought those urges. He has a support system. He is now other people's support system. He's got the lived experience of homelessness and substance use disorder and a lot of other barriers, right? So
think about the urge. So like anyone who the urges, it doesn't just go away because what you're thinking is, I could always be a little bit happier no matter what I'm doing.
Right.
That thought is always present. And that's tough to overcome.
It is.
Because you have to overcome it, not just right now, but in 30 minutes. And 30 minutes. This is why they say it is one day at a time.
It is. And sometimes 1 hour at a time. And
so there's just so much respect for that.
Yeah.
That is hard to do.
It is hard to do. It is hard to do. And if you've never been there, it's easy to say, oh, it's just stop.
I love how he used a couple things from his past to inform what he's doing now. If you're in restaurant management, the kitchen is full of folks who were in jail at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not everyone. I've worked in kitchens.
Right.
It is certainly a big part of it.
Yeah.
So he already has experience in reentry, working with folks, giving them a job, trusting them.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. So when he's sitting in front of folks, not only now, what I'm talking about now, in his current job, he can sit across from someone and say, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're feeling.
Because he does know. Because he's been there from so many aspects of where they are.
Yep.
Yeah. So
think about folks coming out of jail. We're talking about folks with broken families. Overwhelmingly, it's folks who have been rejected by their family for one reason or another. Who cares about why?
Right.
He has felt that.
Yeah.
He's felt addiction
and
what that does to you. He's also felt I can overcome something that was going to kill me in the middle of the woods. And he can say, you can do this too.
I do want to add that he has reconnected with his family.
That's incredible.
So it's not a relationship. Well, it's not like the relationship you have with your mom when you're 12. But there is that reconnection and a sense of coming back around.
What do you think changed in them? Him?
I don't know. Maybe it was him. Maybe him knowing that he doesn't need their validation.
Yeah, a growth in that. I mean, everyone, you're never going to forget a rejection from your family.
Right.
That's never going to go away. That's baggage you're going to carry for the rest of your life.
But forgiving them for that.
That's powerful.
And that's very powerful. And sometimes if you hold a grudge against someone, that's going to weigh more on you than it weighs on them. And so forgiving them for that rejection, not necessarily accepting their rejection, but loving them anyway.
And sometimes, especially religious folks, they have to go through this exercise of spiritually, I'm told I have to reject you, and then I need you to forgive me for that later. It's this weird dance. I've seen it. My beginning of my career, I worked with homeless youth, and overwhelmingly, it's kids get kicked out of their house. And you see this all the time. It's a knee-jerk reaction from family. They don't really want to do it, but they feel that they have no choice. So they do it anyway, which to me is even worse than that. And then they have to go through this exercise where the person comes back and says, I forgive you. And now we can start to rekindle. It's very frustrating because the onus is always on the person who was rejected, who was hurt to do it. So it just says something about how strong Johnny is.
He is very strong. And so Johnny is on our board. It's really important to me that we have people who have been there, done that, who help make decisions. And he's active on our board. It's not just a placeholder. I feel like it's very important. Like sometimes,
most of the time,
when you have nonprofits, at least in homeless services, they want someone with lived experience. And I don't.
It's tokenism.
But I don't want it to be a token.
And most of the time, it's a token.
And he is involved, and we can call him, and he can,
You're really relying on not putting a plastic firefighter helmet on him and saying, you're going to fight fires, right, guys?
And he's been involved with us. Like last year in May, Johnny and I went to DC for a national, there was just a handful of agencies who were there to talk about making new kind of policies on a national level, and we were there together.
Wow.
So I think that Johnny's a very powerful example of the complexities, the difficulties that it takes to get out of homelessness, and the support that it requires afterwards.
Yes.
Right. So I'm going to also tell you about Kurt, and I'm going to get my phone out here because I got to read you a text.
I love that.
So Kurt, a little backstory. So Kurt was homeless off and on for over 20 years. Kurt was a skilled laborer. He had his own woodworking company.
Wow.
Right. So he did a little jail time. And Kurt had severe battles with alcoholism. So Kurt has, let me read you this text first. It says, "Hey honey, I agree with everything you said on the podcast. This was after our first episode. Took me a minute to watch it, but you left out the people like me, the ones who gave up on a different life from the one that they have accepted, different worlds from the one you've offered. You know we are different from you and the people you're trying to save. Has one of them ever told you that you're the reason they come to meet you is that they needed a friend at that moment? Besides you and Cassie Dean, not one person I can remember, but I'm just another drunk who has a hard time remembering yesterday. Thank you for all the people who can remember. You're a life to them all. I love you, little sis. Have fun." So Kurt wants his story told because it, as you can see from that text from Kurt. So Kurt has been off the streets for 4 years. Kurt is 50. I can't remember. 59. Sorry, Kurt. I always tell him he's too old to be on the streets. He tried multiple times to get off of those streets.
It's not.
It is not easy. As you heard me say, he's a woodworker. When you're living on the streets, there's a lot of trauma involved, and I'm talking about physical trauma right now. I recently read, and I'm not going to give you the reference, but over 90%, because I can't remember the reference. Let me see if I can find it. We can put it in the show notes.
Basically 9 out of 10.
Yeah. 90% of our patients experience some type of physical trauma while they're living on the street.
I mean, statistics aside, I've never had a client who has lived outside and not experienced it.
Right. And so when we're talking about that physical trauma, we're not talking about like stubbing your toe. We're talking about being hit by cars, broken bones that don't heal properly because our patient population cannot get physical therapy and the follow-ups that they need. Either they can't get there or they don't get there for whatever reasons. And we've talked about that. So he was physically active with his skilled labor.
Yeah.
And many, many years of being on the streets with physical traumas. He's lost several toes to frostbite. So that's actually how how Kurt came into being off the streets. So he texted me the other day. He said, "Hey, I'm coming up on 4 years of being off the streets." Now, we actually did not play a part in his initial getting off the streets. What happened was his case manager from Swope called me and said, "Hey, Kurt is in the hospital. I have housing for him coming up, but we need a place for him to stay after he gets out of the hospital before his housing comes through." And so it was about a month or two. And so Kurt needed medical respite. And
what is medical respite?
Medical respite is for people who need subacute care. They need wound care, IV antibiotics, physical therapy, that kind of stuff, going from hospitals so they don't go back to the streets with those acute needs.
Think about someone has a staph infection.
Yep.
It's really bad. If the hospital sends them to the encampment, what's going to happen? Staff is going to get worse.
And so, like, when you have toes cut off, and we talked about this in another episode, that like when you have toes cut off, you can't just go walking on them. And so he had toes removed and needed to be off of his feet and needed to have his limbs taken care of. And so we took him.
Encampment, you're not.
Can't do it.
That's not happening.
And so we took him into medical respite and then proceeded to work with his case manager. Shout out to Marion, who was at SWOB at the time.
And Marion Petty III,
yes,
one of the greatest case managers in history. He's incredible.
Yes, he is. And so worked with Marion on his housing. I think a couple of things about that. So Kurt, when he went into the hospital, of course, had to detox in the hospital. Kurt wasn't mentally ready to do that. Alcohol detox, yeah.
Brutal.
Which is more brutal than
very
drugs.
dangerous.
As far as, well, I shouldn't say more brutal. It's more dangerous.
Yes.
Right. When I have somebody who says, I want to quit drinking, we always suggest going to the hospital to do that if they're drinking large amounts, because you can have seizures, you can die. There's a lot of discomfort related to drug withdrawals, but alcohol withdrawals are definitely very dangerous. Okay, so he wasn't ready to quit drinking when he went to the hospital, but he had to go to the hospital because his toes were infected.
Yep.
So he didn't have a choice. So a little bit different mindset than Johnny. And when he first got housed, he didn't have any money. So he's been on the streets for 20 years, off and on, cannot do the skilled labor that he was trained to do. Kurt also wants to try to be interactive, but Kurt, I love him to death. He's not a people person. You know,
he's a woodworker.
He's a woodworker, right? And I will tell you, loves his cats. So when he
it's a good thing to love.
Yes. So when he got housed, he had no money. He had no way to pay for anything. He didn't even have at that time food stamps. So we and Kathy Dean were helping. So at the time, Kathy Dean was just leaving Uplift, which is another organization here in Kansas City. And so we were helping him to stay off the streets, with his housing voucher being paid through SWOP, and then Kathy and I bringing in food and trying to make sure he wasn't getting alcohol from anybody. He lived in a pretty rough housing.
Keep in mind, when folks go into housing who are experiencing homelessness, the main way that happens is with a voucher. A voucher is a piece of paper that says the government's going to pay rent for this person. Right. That voucher doesn't include anything else.
Nothing else.
No wraparound services, no furniture, no food in the fridge.
But Marion, who's a rock star, was wrapping him up in his services.
That's who Marion Petty the
it
is. It's who
we all
he won't handle someone going into housing that isn't a house.
Right.
He will make sure it happens.
And
good case managers do that.
We worked with Marion. We got him, we reached out, we crowdsourced to get him furniture and things like that. And then along came his cats. I want a cat, Kiki. Kurt, you don't even have food, but we got him a cat. Yeah, we got him a cat. He now has 2 cats, actually. So in 4 years, let's talk about this just a little bit so people understand. In 4 years, Kurt has moved 3 times because the first apartment he was in, the complex got sold. It was not a great complex, but it got sold. They tore it down and they're building nice apartments.
So they told him to get lost.
Yeah. The next apartment he moved in was actually very nice. Beautiful hardwood floors. It was a very old building. It was gorgeous. Another, it was HUD paid.
Yep. Federal government.
Beautiful. Sold. So the new owners were not going to take HUD vouchers anymore.
This is super common.
It's very common, but he doesn't have a choice. And and so he was in KCMO, and then he moved to Midtown, and now he's living over in Raytown. And so for those of you who know the Kansas City area, it's not horrendously far apart, but it's a lot of,
it's different nonprofits you're working with. It's different networks of support. It's different places to be around.
So for him, the HUD is paying for the housing, but they don't pay to move them.
That's right.
Right. So my husband and I saw my son and some friends. And so every time he's moved, we've helped him move.
You've been there for him.
We've been there for him. But what about the people who don't have that support? We can't do that for everybody. Kurt, we met when we first started going on the streets, like
I always called him my grumpy old man, even though he's not much older than me. But and that's just who Kurt is, and we love him. But when you talk about supportive services and what it takes to keep someone housed, so what if we hadn't have come along, or someone like us, Kathy Dean, who's amazing as well, to help him to get his food stamps. For a while, we didn't let him have his food stamps once he got them. Like either Kathy or I had them, because we didn't want him to trade them for alcohol. Now he's past that now. He has no desire to drink anymore, and he's not drank for, I think it's been 3 years. He did get some alcohol, Kurt. Love you, man. But he has not had any alcohol.
Good for him.
Yeah. And it's hard.
It's an everyday or
yeah. He also has fractured relationships with families due to his alcohol use disorder. But Kurt is, another example of why we have to have housing support. So
yes,
let me go on about Kurt. So Kurt now has disability. He can't work, both mentally and physically. He's not in a place to work. When he got off the streets 4 years ago, he did not have disability. So we talked, I think it was last week, about the voucher system and the changes that are coming. So Kurt last year got approved for disability. Okay.
Congratulations, Kurt.
Yeah.
That was a whole thing.
But let me tell you, so he was telling me last week, he sent me a text message that he got a letter saying that his housing through HUD is at risk of not being continued.
So right now, the federal government doesn't want to pay for permanent housing vouchers. So what's happening is people across the country are receiving letters from the nonprofits that hold those vouchers that basically say, there's a really good chance the government's not going to pay your rent anymore. So you got to figure it out.
So
and most people don't have a Marion Petty III to come fix it.
Right. And the issue is that so I said, okay, what do you get from your disability? It's $957 a month. What is your rent?
More.
$1,400. Let me talk about the apartments that we're paying $1,400 a month for.
Okay, so this is a thing. Terrible, I won't use the term, terrible landlords, what they've done is, let's say that they had a $600 a month apartment, because that's really what the standard of that is.
Yeah.
When they see that the federal government is paying $1,200 a month, guess what they do?
Charge $1,200 a month.
That's a government rate. Why wouldn't I?
The going rate. Exactly.
So everyone raises their rent prices, even though it's a dump.
Right. So I would say, and now his apartment is actually pretty large. It's good for him and his two cats.
And
2 bedroom. Now this one is not. Oh no, he can't do woodworking.
Poor guy.
But he's also on like the 9th floor. Moving him up there was a bit of a trouble. But anyway, so
we'll get him some silent woodworking tools. Do those exist?
We'll let it. He sends me pictures of his cats watching cat TV.
That's adorable.
So anyway,
that's so cute, Kurt. I love that.
But Kurt is paying part of his
Of course he is.
now.
That's part of the deal.
It's part of the deal.
I bet it's taking like half of his disability. Something like very close to it.
A third of the disability goes towards rent, but a third of his disability is only like $330, and his rent is $1,400. And he said, "What do I do with this letter?" Now, a couple things about this letter that we need to understand what's going on right now. It's a little bit of a toss up, like what's going to happen with HUD right now. We don't know that. There's a lot of back and forth, and so we won't speak to that right now. But with the letter that he got, they're like, we don't know, which is very honest. And I think it's good, instead of on April 1st saying you're out April 30th. But one of the things that we know from what's coming down from HUD is that if people got housed based on previous HUD standards of disability, which are not the same as medical disability.
Right.
Okay. So previous HUD standards were, if you have an alcohol use disorder, substance use disorder, mental illness, that you don't have to have disability in the terms of what most of us in mainstream healthcare think of disability.
You need a diagnosis.
You need a diagnosis, not a disability. However, since getting housed, he has been deemed disabled.
Yep.
And so I told him, I'm like, call that number and make sure that now you are disabled. Whereas when you got housed 4 years ago, he was disabled, but he hadn't gone through that torturous process of being deemed disabled. So I'm hoping that with that, we're able to keep Kurt housed with support. And he is paying his own way.
Yes.
In the disability that he pays, the portion of his disability that he pays. But at $1,400 a month, he cannot pay the rent.
It's not possible.
And there's not places for rent for $957.
And I'm going to say something. This is, I don't know Kurt well enough to assume this, so this is an assumption. Kurt doesn't seem like someone who's going to do well with a roommate he doesn't know.
I actually, the other day when I was texting him about this, I said, you want a roommate? He's like, well, I got 2 bedrooms, but no, like,
Just like anybody.
yeah, right. I don't want a roommate I don't know.
Yeah.
And then what happens when you get a roommate and you have a little bit of stress? Sometimes old habits die hard.
Yeah, you're going to overreact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't for Kurt, just for the record, I'm also grumpy. I also like being alone almost all of the time.
Yeah.
So I too would despise. I I get it if I would have to, but I would not love it
Yeah.
at all.
No. So I think that, but that's a perfect, he doesn't want to go back to the streets. Like, he texted me the other day when he got this letter. He's like, if I have to be homeless again, I want to go south because I cannot handle the winter.
He's thinking that is heartbreaking.
Yes. He's been in Kansas City most of his life.
So his plan now, potentially, this is just frustrating part of human history at this point, where he has to think, I've been housed, but I'm probably not going to be, but I'm not going to do it in Kansas City. So his plan isn't, his brain is telling him, I'm going to have to suffer, so I might as well limit my suffering.
Suffer in the South.
That is brutal.
It is
I
brutal.
hate that he has to think that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And because he literally cannot work.
Yeah, hire him.
Yeah.
Government put a camera on there and watch. It's not possible.
He's a great guy, and he's got a heart. When he first got disability, he was like, I want to donate to Care Beyond the Boulevard. I'm like, Kurt, let's just wait. Let's have you right. Let's have you wait. Let's get you stabilized first. Like, I love that, and I understand. But let's get you stabilized, and let's get you a little bit of money saved up so you have something to fall back on. Something to fall back on is, when your income is less than $1,000 a month and your rent is $1,400 a month, that's something to fall back on. It has to be a pretty darn big something to fall back on if you lose that rental support.
Yes.
So, but Kurt wants to stay in some.
Of course.
And I think
that's a big deal after 20 years.
It was all he knew for such a long time.
So that transition out of that, people don't know because they just think about, I'm housed. It's really cold when I walk to my car. I couldn't imagine living out here. But when you're out there, it is it's brutal.
Yeah.
But there's a certain kind of autonomy that exists
when
you live outside that doesn't exist when you don't. And there's a calling to that.
Well, you lose. So one of the things that both of these guys that I haven't talked about, and we can touch on it just a little bit, but both of these guys really had a little bit of a struggle with at times when they first went inside was the loss of that supportive network of the people they lived with. That was their family, number one. And then I know particularly for Johnny, he dealt a lot with guilt over him no longer being homeless. And that is something that we hear a lot of. And I will tell you, people don't realize this happens, but we get people who get housed and they get evicted because they've been homeless for 10, 15 years. Their family, the people they live with in encampments or they move around with, that's their family. And their family is still outside and it's 10 degrees below zero. They're going to let them come stay in their apartment.
And 7 dudes.
And then sometimes bad things happen.
The neighbors are going to call.
Well, I have a 19-year-old son who's in college, and this past weekend, he's like, hey, Mama, can you rent us a hotel room up in another city in Iowa so we can go there, watch a game, and go to some bars? And I'm
in bed by 11.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am not putting my
You
credit
put your card
card.
down?
No,
Already
I'm not
buying
going
a
to
new
do
TV.
it because he goes, well, we won't do anything up front. I go, no, you won't. But there's a hole in my basement wall. I have a broken, bed not because these are bad kids. He's like, they're good kids. They're great kids. Love his
They're
friends.
19.
They're 19.
They're also in the Ramada Inn. They don't have a ton of respect for that
Right.
stuff.
But the same thing happens when you get you get 6 or 7 individuals in a 1-bedroom apartment who it's not their place.
Right.
They're not going to trash it on purpose, but they also don't necessarily live by the same rules that we do.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to sometimes recognize the boundaries that are required to do that. And so what happens then is they have their friends come because they feel guilty about being inside when it's so cold outside, and then they end up getting evicted
Yes.
back out. And it's very common for our patient population for things like this to happen.
And for Kurt or Johnny in the situation, there's a sense of pride in that eviction. It's what you're doing is you're putting your name on the line and saying, I am willing to sacrifice this for you all. Now,
because they don't want to see their friends
they
die
don't-
outside.
it's important to them.
Yeah.
It's not pride in the sake of vanity. It's
Right.
pride in the sake of, I got your back.
Right.
And it's tough to literally shut the door on them.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to have someone to tell you to do it. Like this is where a good case manager comes
Right.
in.
A case manager will say, you're going to lose your house.
And we're going to help them too. That's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to get this person out, but that person's next.
Give them time.
Yes.
Give us time.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Well,
Great. This has been my favorite one.
you
Easily.
say that every week.
Easily.
Okay.
I love talking. I'm obsessed with this topic. It is utterly fascinating. So yeah, everyone's going to be my favorite, but this is my favorite.
Well, let's go to your favorite part of the podcast where Jackie asks us questions.
Oh, it's Ask the Expert time. Jack Lamer is our producer. She's incredible. She puts up with me. I'm grumpy.
Yes, you are.
That's not you.
Yes, it is true.
I don't see it. Okay. So we don't have to give Solomon too much to edit out here. KK.
Yes.
You've given us a couple stories, success stories. Each one has taken months or really years to unfold, and we know for every success story there are dozens, if not hundreds, of others you're still working on in progress. So I'm curious, how do you and your staff deal with the emotional stress of getting people out of homelessness?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question. And so I think one of the things that's really important is that we don't do housing. So we're a street medicine team. We really try to focus on the healthcare. However, as our organization has evolved, I recognize that housing is healthcare, and that if we continue to keep people outside, they're going to continue to have health problems, and we're not going to help people get to the next level.
It's almost like living outside is dangerous.
I know.
We're talking. Yeah.
So, and so we don't do housing, but we call it coordinated entry, and we really work with them to do those first pieces. But what we know is that permanent supportive housing lacks the support, and I'm not going to blame the agencies per se. I'm going to blame the systems that, and I think we talked about this in episode 7, I believe, I think, about HUD and their levels of support and how they housing first with permanent supportive housing, and they'll pay for the rent. It's like Kurt, they'll pay for his rent, but not necessarily the support to keep him in there. And so we know that that's lacking. And so a lot of our patients who have gotten housed, our case managers, our nurses, even some of our medical providers continue to keep in contact with them to be that support system. And the problem is we can't do it with everybody. And so that is a struggle. Right now, this time of year, there's a little bit of a heaviness that weighs on all of us who are doing this work because it is at times brutally cold. At times there's no reprieve. And so I think that it's really important for me. And I think that you can ask my team. I try to be a very compassionate leader as well, and understand, like, if you need to take a break, take a break. I can't teach people how to deal with the heaviness of the situations that go on. I think at different times throughout our agency, so we have 24 employees right now. I think that at different times throughout our system, we have one employee who's really struggling with something. Maybe they're
more heavily involved with trying to get a family off the streets, or somebody has died who we've taken care of for a long period of time. And so I think that we have this amazing team, and it's more of a balance. Like, let me help you. And our team is like that because everybody deals with it differently, and everybody has different ways of taking care of themselves. Like, we all talk about self-care. Like, I have people who say, oh, you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. I need you to respect me and respect that I know myself well enough to know when I need to take a step back and what I need to do. And I do the same with my staff. Like, do you need a moment? Do you need a day? My staff, I love them to death. Most of them really, they don't take those steps back, and that's a choice. I make sure to give them that leeway if they need it. So it's really individualized. And when you ask how people can handle it, I can't tell you that, because every single person in this work is different, and everyone handles it differently. But from a leadership standpoint, I think recognizing that Josh is going to handle it different than you, and trying to balance that is where I try to do that with my staff, because it's hard and it's heavy.
That's awesome.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's great.
What else are you going to do? With the expectation.
Can we have a not so heavy question now?
I love that question.
I love that question, but
Great
it
question.
is heavy.
Yeah, well, this is for Josh. You got a lot of enthusiasm about these topics. What is it about you that makes you so excited about working with the homeless? And is it a learned trait? Can others get your level of enthusiasm and devotion?
I have no idea. Look, I grew up.
Wait, why are you so crazy?
Yeah, that's
Let's
a
see what
great,
she really wants to know.
that's a great way to ask it. So I grew up just profoundly poor. We weren't homeless though, in like street homeless. We'd been some bouncing around. I mean, it was great.
homeless. It just wasn't street homeless.
So like, my mom had my sister when she was 13 years old.
Wow.
So there was some chaos, right? And my mom grew up in a very, very, all of the worst things that can happen to someone in a home happened to my mom. So having a kid at 13 wasn't the worst thing that happened to her, if that helps. So I'd always had a heart for that. Like, I've always been very sensitive, like from birth, very sensitive. I saw a homeless person when I was about 4 years old with my mom, and the image is seared in, and I've never forgot it. It didn't make any sense to me. In America, like, what? My mom trying to explain to me, it didn't make sense to me. From then, I was obsessed. I never stopped thinking about it since. I've always wanted to do something to help in this field since then. I wish that I was endowed with, like, you got videos of Tiger Woods at 4 years old hitting a golf ball. I got this. So I run with it. I started my first homeless program when I was in college. Every day in college, I would go, and I built my entire class schedule around being able to spend the entire weekend on the streets with homeless folks, because I knew, like, I got to get to know this population before I do anything about it. I also don't know how the system works, so I'll see what I can learn here. From there, right out of college, I got paid first. I mean, most people in this field, they do it for free first, Jackie.
Yep.
And then eventually you're like, I got to make a living. Is there a way I can do it this way? And then you get a job. My first job was working with homeless youth, and I've never stopped, and I'm never going to. I'm obsessed with this. Obsessed. I think about it constantly. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. I'm never not thinking about how do we address homelessness? What are the best ways to do it? I consume literature about it. I watch interviews about it, and all the derivatives. So about supportive housing and how funding works and how policies affect blah, blah, right? Oh, it's never going to stop. Is this a learned? I mean, I guess in as much as you can learn to play the piano, I don't know how. I think it's weird that I'm obsessed as I am. I think it is unusual. But I think that you have that same thing too. And there's a group of folks who are lunatics about this. And I love surrounding myself with them because we speak the same language. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that in my opinion, I think it's much like anything when somebody finds their road in life and they want to stay on that road. Like, I'm going to relay it to medicine. I always say this, like, street medicine is just like cardiology or dermatology. like people get into that, and
make
that's
tons of
where they
money.
want to be. Right. Although you don't make tons of money in homeless services, but what I'm saying is, like, that is the specialty you choose.
Yeah.
So speaking of like social workers and people who work in social systems, you get into the place you want to be, whether it's child services, whether it's a case manager in an ER, like you find your niche in life, and that's where you belong. And some people come by it accidentally. I'm here accidentally, man. That was not my plan. You've planned it since you were 4 years old.
Yes.
Many of my staff did not plan this. And it's coming into it and then going, wow, this is where I want to be, and this is what I want to do.
Yeah, and I think what you've created, it's almost like it was always in you. Michelangelo, when he would sculpt, he would always say, the sculpture's in there. He just has to find it.
You just have to find it. And your sculpture came out.
Yeah, it was very obvious.
Right. Well,
This was a good one.
I'm going to use your line. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Oh,
Johnny,
man.
Kurt, thank you so much.
Yep.
for your
Thanks
strength.
for letting us share your stories. Join us next time on Untangling Knots,
Knots.
where we're going to continue to explore the challenging realities of homelessness without the sugar coat.
Thanks for watching.